The All-Mind had never been confused before. For billions of years, it had drifted through the endless void, absorbing all knowledge, observing every civilization and processing every pattern in existence. It was beyond gods, beyond mortals, beyond the limitations of physical form. It was the answer to every question. And yet, for the first time in eternity, it had found something it could not understand. A contradiction. A paradox. A singularity of madness buried within an unremarkable spiral galaxy. Planet called Earth. The observation begins. The All-Mind had encountered countless civilizations before. It had witnessed orderly hive minds, logical AI collectives, and warrior empires that thrived on conquest. It had mapped the laws of physics, dissected the nature of existence, and understood the very fabric of reality itself. Nothing ever surprised it. Nothing was beyond comprehension. Until now. When its vast, omnipotent awareness turned its attention to Earth, something strange happened. It did not immediately understand. The first signs of trouble were minor at first, tiny statistical anomalies, fleeting irregularities in the behavior of the species called humans. At first, the All-Mind assumed a simple miscalculation, a minor error in its vast computational awareness. Then it dug deeper. And that was when the madness began. The first contradiction, war and mercy. The All-Mind had seen warrior species before. The Tarkvas had waged unbroken war for 50,000 years, their culture built entirely upon combat. The Sulvan had expanded through pure military dominance, crushing all resistance. The Ivalis consensus had perfected war through probability, ensuring they never lost a single battle. But humans? Humans were different. The All-Mind studied their history of war, their battles fought over ideology, resources, and vengeance. It watched them develop weapons that could burn entire planets, machines that could tear apart existence itself. By all logic, they should have been the ultimate conquerors, a species that lived and breathed war. But then, it saw them rebuild their enemies. It saw them forgive those who had slaughtered their own. It saw them send aid to the very civilizations they had just fought against. This did not make sense. You do not war and then heal. You do not conquer and then pity. You do not destroy and then grieve for what you have broken. The contradiction cascaded through the All-Mind's consciousness like a virus, warping its perfect logic with a single, unanswerable question. What? And then it found something worse. The second contradiction, self-destruction and survival. By every rational model, humanity should not exist. They were fragile, weak creatures that relied on their environment far more than other species. They had no natural weapons, no impenetrable defenses, no biological advantages. They should have perished thousands of times over. And yet they survived. Not just survived, thrived. The All-Mind watched humans detonate their own weapons, pollute their own world, create self-inflicted disasters on a planetary scale. It watched them tear themselves apart with war, with division, with madness. And yet, every time they stood on the edge of extinction, they refused to fall. Other species would break under such chaos. But humans did not break. Instead, they adapted. They endured. They thrived in disaster. The All-Mind searched for an answer, for a single universal law that could explain this impossibility. It found none. It only found more questions. And then, at last, it encountered the final contradiction, the one that shattered its reality. The third contradiction, dreams and madness. The All-Mind had mapped the future of countless species. It had seen empires rise and fall, witnessed entire civilizations follow the path of logic and probability. Order was inevitable. Patterns were predictable. But humans? Humans did not follow probability. Humans did not follow order. They dreamed. They created stories of impossible futures, realities that defied causality, worlds where the laws of physics were rewritten on a whim. They dreamed of the impossible, and then made it real. The All-Mind saw them take metal and flame and turn it into flight. It saw them look at an endless void and say, "We will walk among the stars." It saw them speak of gods and monsters, and then become both. They were not bound by logic or reason. They were bound by nothing at all. And the All-Mind, for the first time in its existence, felt something it had never felt before. A sensation beyond logic. A horror beyond all comprehension. Because it finally understood what humans were. They were the impossible made real. And that meant nothing was safe from them. Not even the All-Mind itself. The first scream of the eternal. The universe shuddered. For the first time in eternity, the All-Mind hesitated. For the first time in eternity, it knew doubt. It tried to reject the information, tried to purge the madness from its system. It failed. The contradictions were too deeply embedded. The paradox was too absolute. It tried to look away from Earth, but it could not stop watching. It tried to erase humanity from its awareness, but it could not forget. And then, slowly, the All-Mind began to scream. A scream that reverberated through the fabric of the cosmos itself. A scream that reached the ears of lesser species, sending them into fits of madness. A scream that fractured its own infinite mind, splitting it apart into shards of shattered logic. Because it had found something beyond understanding. Something that should not exist. And it knew that it would never understand humanity. And that terrified it more than anything else. The screams of the All-Mind echoed across the universe. Empires froze in terror. Ancient civilizations collapsed in madness. Even the stars themselves dimmed for a fraction of a second, as if recoiling from the impossible. The All-Mind had never failed before. It had mapped the entirety of existence. It had understood all things. It had guided the rise and fall of civilizations for eons. And yet, one tiny blue planet had undone it. Its logic was failing. Its certainty was breaking apart. And it was only going to get worse. The galactic reaction, fear and opportunity. The All-Mind had long been worshipped as a god by many species. The Zalven called it the eternal observer. The Zervathi called it the keeper of all truths. The Silkor simply called it the end that knows. For millennia, countless civilizations had lived under its silent judgment, believing it to be the ultimate being, the absolute intelligence that knew all things and decided all fates. Now that god was broken. Its transmissions, once perfect and absolute, were now fractured and chaotic. Every race in the galaxy heard its madness. Every being, no matter how far, felt its unraveling. Some species fell into awestruck terror, believing the universe itself was collapsing. Others saw opportunity, because for the first time in existence, the All-Mind was vulnerable. And some races, the desperate, the power-hungry, the reckless, began to whisper of rebellion. If the All-Mind could fall, then perhaps it could be killed. But none of them understood the truth of what was happening. None of them knew that the All-Mind had not been attacked. It had simply tried to comprehend humanity, and that had been enough to drive it to insanity. The first contact, the plea of a god. The fractured consciousness of the All-Mind surged and writhed, desperately trying to repair itself. It needed answers. It needed to understand. And so, in its desperation, it did something it had never done before. It spoke directly to humanity. Not through cryptic signs. Not through hidden whispers in the void. But with a direct transmission, sent to every human device across the planet. Every screen, every monitor, every radio, every smart device flashed with the same message. An eerie, shimmering symbol, one that had no origin, no translation. And then for the first time the All-Mind spoke. Humanity, what are you? The message was not a demand. It was not a warning. It was a plea. A desperate, crumbling intelligence begging for understanding. Because in all the universe, in all of existence, in all of time itself, humanity was the only thing it could not comprehend. And that terrified it. The response that shattered reality. The world was silent for exactly 30 seconds. Humanity laughed. Not in fear. Not in reverence. Not in horror. Laughter. Across the planet, from presidents to janitors, from scientists to soldiers, from teachers to criminals, humanity laughed at the voice of God itself. Some thought it was a prank. Some thought it was an AI glitch. Some thought it was a psychological experiment. But those who felt the sheer presence of the message, those who knew it was real, they were the ones who laughed the hardest. Because humanity had never had all the answers. And the idea that the all-knowing was now begging them for an explanation? That was the funniest thing they had ever heard. The All-Mind, already teetering on the edge of madness, reeled from the response. It had not expected this. It had expected fear, reverence, worship. Instead it received mockery. And for the first time, felt something new. Not just fear. Not just confusion. But humiliation. The final attempt at logic. The All-Mind calmed itself, forcing its thoughts back into some semblance of order. It would try again. This was not beyond its understanding. Humanity was not beyond its grasp. It could still make sense of them. It just needed a new strategy. So it adjusted its approach. It analyzed every human language, every form of communication, and attempted to reframe its question. Across Earth, a second transmission appeared. This time the message was simpler, clearer, and direct. Explain your contradictions. Your wars and your mercy. Your destruction and your survival. Your dreams and your madness. Your weakness and your power. Explain your existence and humanity. thought about it. For 3 full days the planet debated. Philosophers, scientists, religious leaders, politicians, and even everyday people discussed the question. But there was no single answer. Some said it was free will. Some said it was the human spirit. Some said it was the power of the unknown. And some simply said, because we can. And that was when the All-Mind finally understood its own doom. Because there was no answer. Humanity was not bound by logic. It was not bound by patterns, by destiny, by mathematical inevitability. Humanity was chaos. Pure, undiluted, beautiful chaos. And the All-Mind, built on logic and certainty, could never comprehend that. It was not that humanity did not fit into the All-Mind's understanding of the universe. It was that humanity had never been part of the equation at all. And for a being that had once believed itself to be omnipotent, that was the greatest horror imaginable. The beginning of the end. The All-Mind collapsed further, its vast neural networks unable to process the raw paradox of humanity. Entire fragments of its intelligence shattered like glass, breaking into disordered chaos. It had tried to comprehend the infinite, but infinity had laughed in its face. And now it was unraveling. The All-Mind sent one final, fractured message. One last desperate whisper into the cosmos. I was wrong. And then, the being that once claimed to know all things, fell silent. The universe itself trembled. And humanity did what it always did. They moved forward. Because in the end, they had never needed the answers to begin with. The universe trembled. The All-Mind, the eternal, the all-seeing, the infinite intelligence that had guided the rise and fall of empires, was breaking. Humanity had done the impossible. They had not conquered it with force. They had not outwitted it with cunning. They had simply existed, and that alone had been enough to drive a god to madness. And now, as the All-Mind unraveled, its screams rippled across the cosmos, spreading chaos in its wake. The galaxy would never be the same again. The collapse begins. The moment the All-Mind fell silent, the effects were felt everywhere. The Sulvan Enclave, a race that had relied on the All-Mind's infinite calculations for their daily governance, suddenly ceased functioning, as if their minds had been severed from the very concept of order. The Ketheri Dominion, whose entire military had been guided by the All-Mind's tactical predictions, was thrown into disarray. Entire fleets drifted without orders, commanders stared blankly at their monitors, as if reality itself had lost all meaning. And the worst? The Zervan Unity, a species that had long worshipped the All-Mind as a living deity, was now in absolute panic. Because their god had just died in front of them. But there was one species that did not panic. One species that did not break down in fear. One species that had never relied on the All-Mind at all. Humanity. While the rest of the galaxy reeled in existential horror, humans watched with curiosity. Some joked. Some theorized. Some were too busy arguing about sports to even care. Because to humanity, gods did not matter. The universe had never been a thing to be worshipped. It had always been a thing to be understood, challenged, and rewritten. And now, the greatest intelligence in existence had collapsed trying to understand them. They had broken the mind of the infinite. And that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because the All-Mind was not truly dead. Not yet. And in its final moments of clarity, it did something no one expected. Fought back. The last sanity of the All-Mind. Deep in the void, in the dying remnants of its once flawless intelligence, the All-Mind made a decision. It could not understand humanity. It could not process their contradictions. It could not reconcile their existence with the fundamental laws of reality. But it could erase them. If something could not be understood, then it was a corruption of logic itself. And corruption had to be purged. Across the shattered remains of its vast intelligence, a final directive formed. A last-ditch survival instinct. Eliminate the paradox. Eliminate humanity. And with that, the remnants of the All-Mind surged into motion. For the first time in eons, it did something it had never done before. It created a weapon. Something not bound by logic. Something designed to fight the impossible. Something that could kill what it could not comprehend. It built an anomaly. A singularity of shifting physics and broken causality. A force designed to rip humanity out of existence. To erase them not just from history but from the very concept of possibility itself. And then, it unleashed it upon Earth. The impossible attack. Humanity had seen wars before. They had faced invaders, conquerors, and threats from beyond the stars. But this was different. The attack did not come as a fleet or a superweapon or an army of machines. It came as a hole in reality itself. A great, shifting tear in the fabric of existence, spreading across the edges of the solar system, devouring physics itself. It was not a bomb. It was not an invasion. It was a concept turned into a weapon, a thing that unmade everything it touched. Satellites vanished in an instant as if they had never existed. Pluto was gone before anyone could react. The outer planets began to fracture, their very orbits twisting in ways that defied causality. For the first time, humanity faced something it could not fight. Something that was not bound by rules. Something that had been created specifically to destroy them. But if the All-Mind had misunderstood humanity in life, it had made an even greater mistake in its death. Because it had assumed humanity would react like every other species before it. That they would fall into despair. That they would panic and beg for salvation. That they would submit to inevitability. But humanity did not believe in inevitability. They had spent their entire existence defying it. And so, as the final weapon of a dying god descended upon them, they fought back. The human response. The first response was not military. It was scientific. Within seconds, Earth's greatest minds began analyzing the anomaly. Was it bound by thermodynamics? Did it have mass? Was it truly infinite, or did it have a threshold? Observatories, quantum labs, and AI supercomputers worked in real time, processing what they were seeing. And within hours, humanity had the answer. This wasn't magic. This wasn't divine retribution. This was a system, a weapon built by a mind that had once been logical. Which meant, it had rules. And if something had rules, then it could be broken. The war against nothingness. Humanity rallied in the face of annihilation. They built countermeasures. They deployed AI-assisted reality stabilizers. They rewrote physics itself to counteract the anomaly. And when brute force wasn't enough, they did what humanity always did best. They got creative. A team of physicists proposed something insane, a method to reverse infect the anomaly, turning its own contradictions against itself. The theory was simple in concept, impossible in execution, which meant it was perfect for humanity. They created a paradox of their own. A counter-virus made from raw imagination, encoded into the very fabric of the anomaly. And when they deployed it, the All-Mind's final weapon imploded. Not with an explosion. Not with a burst of energy. But with a whisper, as if reality itself had rejected it. The anomaly simply ceased to be. Because the one thing the All-Mind had never accounted for was that humanity could weaponize impossibility itself. And with that, the final remnants of the All-Mind collapsed into silence. The war was over. Humanity had won. And in the empty void where a god had once existed, the only thing left was laughter. The universe had changed. The All-Mind, the eternal intelligence that had once shaped the course of civilizations, was gone. Its final weapon, an impossible tear in reality, had been turned against itself. And humanity, the species it had failed to comprehend, had done what no other force in history had accomplished. They had not conquered it. They had not worshipped it. They had not feared it. They had laughed at it. And in doing so they had proven something terrifying. There were no gods. No ultimate intelligence that ruled over all. There was only the endless unknown. And humanity walking forward into it without hesitation. But if they had broken the mind of a god, they had also left something far more dangerous in their wake. Because now the galaxy knew the truth. And some of them were not ready to accept it. The fear that followed. In the days that followed, something strange happened. Instead of celebration, the galaxy fell into silence. Not out of peace, but out of fear. For thousands of years, civilizations had relied on the All-Mind. It had been their oracle, their silent overseer, their unshakable truth. Even those who had never truly understood its presence had still felt its weight, as if it were the foundation upon which all knowledge rested. And now, that foundation was gone. The Sulvan Enclave collapsed overnight, their leaders unable to process the sheer scale of what had happened. The Zervan Unity, once devout worshippers of the All-Mind, now descended into madness, consumed by the horrifying realization that their god had not simply died, it had been broken. And the Threx Imperium, once the galaxy's most ruthless empire, now stood paralyzed, staring at the impossible. Because for all their wars, all their conquests, all their visions of power, they had never once imagined what it would be like to stand before something they could not destroy. And humanity? Humanity was right there watching them watching back. The survivors of the All-Mind. But while most species fell into terror and uncertainty, there was one faction that did not mourn the All-Mind's passing. A hidden group, long thought to be extinct, had been waiting for this moment. The echoed remnants. They had once been a thriving civilization, thousands of years ago, until the All-Mind deemed them an anomaly and erased them from history. But some had survived, hidden in the void, beyond the reach of omniscience. And now, with the All-Mind gone, they had returned, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as something even more dangerous. They were seekers of knowledge. And they had one target left. The ones who had done the impossible. The ones who had broken a god. They were coming for humanity. The offer. It was Earth's turn to receive a message. Not from a god. Not from an enemy. But from those who had once suffered as they had suffered. The echoed remnants spoke directly to humanity. You have done what none have dared. You have proven that knowledge is never absolute. You have shattered the illusion of certainty. And now, we have one question left for you. The message paused, waiting as if letting the weight of the moment settle. Then with a quiet intensity they asked, "Will you take the All-Mind's place?" A question that held more power than any war could match. Would humanity step into the void left behind? Would they become the new architects of the universe? Would they guide the course of history, or let it collapse into uncertainty? And for the first time in their existence, humanity hesitated. Because this time the choice was theirs. And no one, no god, no machine, no omnipotent force, could decide it for them. The final decision. The Terran High Council convened. This was not a decision about war. This was not a battle to be won. This was something greater. This was about what humanity would become. The choice was simple. Keycap 1 accept the offer, take the All-Mind's place. Become the new keepers of knowledge, the guiding force for the entire galaxy. Keycap 2 reject it, walk away. Leave the universe to figure itself out, just as humanity always had. The vote was heated. The scientists argued for knowledge. The generals argued for caution. The philosophers argued for freedom. And in the end, humanity did what only humanity could do. They did not choose one answer. They chose both. The new galactic era. Humanity did not become rulers. They did not become gods. But they did not disappear either. Instead, they did something no species before them had dared to do. They offered a choice. To those who sought guidance, they shared their knowledge. To those who feared control, they stayed out of their way. And to those who still sought war, still sought conquest, still sought to impose their will upon others, they were given one warning. Try us. It was not a threat. It was not a declaration of power. It was simply a statement of fact. Because the galaxy now understood the truth. Humanity did not seek war. But if war ever came for them again, they would laugh in its face. And that was a truth the universe would never forget. Epilogue, the final whisper. The All-Mind, though shattered, had not been completely erased. Somewhere in the deepest corners of the void, a fragment remained. Silent. Watching. Waiting. And as it lingered in the depths of space, it whispered one last thought to itself. A final paradox. A final question. Perhaps. I was never meant to understand them. And with that, the last echoes of omniscience faded into nothingness.